As we're going over those 12 thinking traps, I hope that you're kind of thinking of situations in your everyday lives where you might have used those, be it on a daily basis or in the past. And there's some worksheets that we're going to do that will have you kind of thinking a little deeper about that as well. Now what we're going to go into is the ABCDE model. This model is all about following the kind of path of a thought, disrupting it, and changing it. So these thinking traps, they're lapses in logic. They're fallacies, as they're known. They're ways that we have thought in the past that have then rooted themselves in our brains, and they're not logical. So the whole purpose of this ABCDE model is to understand the pathway that they take and disrupt it so that it can form new pathways, and that our ways of thinking aren't always to go to these negative thinking traps, and therefore make ourselves more positive, happy, energetic, mentally stable individuals. So, you're going to kind of notice that this is kind of similar to some of the stuff we did last module in emotional regulation, and there's a reason for that. So, the ABCDE model is as follows. So, A, the activation event. This is the exact same as the prompting event. It can be something external, like an insult or a mark, missing the bus, all those situations. But a lot of times too, it's internal. You have a feeling or a thought that activates it. B, the belief. This is, again, just the interpretation from last module. Something happens, and then our brain, based on the wiring, the thought patterns that we've developed over our lifetime, then have a reaction. Something happens, and we have a belief of what that means in our minds. We then have consequence. This is both our emotional and behavioral action. So it's kind of the rest of emotional regulation in all of C here. Something happened, A, we believe it in a certain way, B, and then C, we have a consequence. So we feel, act, and think in a certain way based on our beliefs of that action. It's the cognitive triangle all wrapped up into one again. But the important part now is D, disrupt this cycle. So how we're going to disrupt it is, again, identify the thinking trap, accept that you're having it. So we've just gone over this list. I want you to get used to knowing what these 12 thinking traps are and start to pinpoint them in your life. And that's the first step, is know that you're doing them. So A, B, C, D, you got to disrupt it. You got to stop it from happening. And the way that you do it is acknowledge, yes, it's happening. So you're sitting there, you're in the car, and you just come back from Subway, and the guy was really, really rude to you. You walk in and you ask for extra mayo, and he's just not having it. He says, nope, no more mayo, slams it down, slams your sandwich down, asks for the money, and says, get out of here. Awful situation. You leave feeling horrible. Now, you might start using Mind Reader or Fortune Teller or catastrophizing or black and white situation. There's going to be a whole bunch of thinking traps that happen here. And you might think, well, he probably doesn't like me, or he probably saw me when I first come in and says, oh, that person looks like an idiot or stupid. I'm going to give them a really bad experience here. But if we put a little bit of logic in here and think, well, no, that way of thinking, that's a thinking trap. There could be a logical solution to it that doesn't about me. You're going to take away the personalization and think, you know what, maybe they're just having a really bad day. Maybe they just got out back when their boss just screamed at them. And they were just taking it out on me. It actually had nothing to do with me. It could have been anybody in that situation. So you got to disrupt it. You got to say, yep, that's a thinking trap that happened, and then you got to challenge that thinking trap. So once you know, okay, you know what, I was fortune telling there. I was assuming that my coworker didn't talk to me because she's mad at me. But if you use fortune teller, well, I know that she's working on that really big project and it's due in like 2 hours, so maybe she's really busy and has a lot on her mind. So you identified that you're mind reading, and then that you disrupt it. You give logic. E, which is basically the after effects. So now it's in a positive. We talked about emotional regulation last week, where a trauma can embed it into your brain so that you now have an emotional response every time you're in a similar situation. By challenging, by doing D and disrupting the thinking trap, you've now affected your beliefs. And it's going to affect the way you feel, the way you think, and the way you behave in the future. And it's going to slowly start to rewire your brain so that your default isn't a thinking trap, but your default is a logical reason. And when it's a logical reason, you're not going to have the negative emotions and negative feelings. And when you stop feeling negative all day, you're going to be more mentally clear, more mentally able to handle difficult situations, and you're on the road to being the version of yourself that you want to be. So I know you're sitting there thinking, Zach, that sounds great, that I can just disrupt it. I can just notice that I'm having these thinking traps. But what if I can't convince myself that, you know what, it's just a thinking trap, it's not real? So there's going to be a worksheet, Challenging Negative Thoughts. This is a tremendous worksheet to use to start disrupting those thoughts and convince yourself that, yes, it is just a thinking trap. It's not reality. It's just the reality I'm forcing myself to feel because that's how my brain has worked for so long, but I'm going to disrupt it. So this sheet is great. So if you're in this position where you're able to kind of think that you're using a thinking trap, but you don't know how to properly challenge it, use this worksheet. It does a great job of breaking down step by step how to disrupt the thought so that you can see, yes, it is indeed a thinking trap. So let's use the example and work through this quickly together. So let's say that you have the thought of, I'm never going to get a job. Well, first off, identify what kind of thinking trap that might be. So I would say that's probably fortune telling or even overgeneralization. So we're using a never statement, so overgeneralization, saying I'm never going to get a job. Never is a really powerful word. And fortune telling. You don't know the future. You don't know what's going to happen. So now let's go through this sheet. First step, is there substantial evidence for this thought? Is there anything that's really concrete in the world, not in your head, in the world that's going to say, I'm never going to get a job? Is it just you being down on yourself, or is there good evidence to show that you're never going to get one? I'm pretty sure if you start reasoning it out and look at factors outside of your mind, you're going to see there's not a whole lot. Is there evidence to the contrary, or is there evidence that goes against what you're saying? Maybe you've had a job in the past, so why wouldn't you be able to get another one? Maybe you've been working on your resume, you're working on your GED, you're working on things so that you can get a job. There's probably more evidence in the opposite direction of your belief than to support your dream. Am I deciding to interpret this thought without all the information? So am I only looking at a sliver of it? Am I saying, oh, I'm never going to get a job because you didn't get one job interview? Are you going to say, oh, I'm never going to get a job, but I only passed out one resume? Are you taking all the factors into consideration when you're doing it, or are you just relying on that emotion that you have and letting it take over? Another thing, what would a friend think about this situation? Would a friend say that to you? There's this thing where we talk to ourselves so much worse than we would talk to anybody else. We would never say the things we say to a person that we say to ourselves in our mind. Our friend would not say, no, you're never going to get a job. You worked 2 weeks ago. You worked a month ago. You worked there for 6 months. Just because you're not working right now doesn't mean you can't find a job. I found a job. You're going to find a job. It's put ourselves in different situations, because again, we talked a little bit earlier that we're really good at seeing things from our mind, but we're not good at seeing others' perspectives. So put yourself in somebody else's shoes and say, would you say the same thing? The next thing, flip the thought on its head. Look at it completely opposite. Say to yourself, I am going to get a job. Now, if there's all this evidence that's saying that no, you're not, then that thought's going to feel weird. It's going to feel wrong. It's not going to add up. But you can start looking at the evidence from that point of view. Yeah, I'm going to get a job. I've got a good resume. I only started handing them out yesterday. I've already got one call. Interview didn't go great, but you know what? There's more time out there to get it. So switch the thought completely on its head and look at it from a different point of view and see if that positive point of view is better than that negative one. And I'm sure that things are actually, if you look at it logically, things are going to point to the positive thought rather than the negative thought. And the last thing, will this matter in a year from now? Will this matter in 5 years from now? The job one, it could. It could matter. Having employment is a big part of our lives, but there's so many other thinking traps that we do on a daily basis that don't matter in 5 years. Is it going to matter in 5 years that Subway guy wasn't nice to you? Answer is probably not. We put so much weight and value on things that in the long term don't matter. So again, try to change your perspective and say, you know what, in the moment this might feel awful, but am I ever going to remember this moment in 5 years? And I guarantee you, if you use all these kind of steps to challenge negative thoughts, you're going to start perceiving them different. You might even laugh and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was so worried 5 minutes ago. But now that I've identified the thinking trap and dissected it a little bit, I know that it's just my brain talking to me in a negative sense, which I'm not going to let happen anymore. I'm going to switch it and start talking to myself in a positive manner. So if you found that worksheet helpful about challenging your negative thoughts, but you want a little bit more practice, check out the Wakelet, and there's going to be a handout, a worksheet kind of labeled Untwisting Your Thoughts. And again, this is going to give you 10 tips or so that you can use in every day so that you can challenge those thoughts and understand that they are just thoughts and not reality. Alright, so we're going to finish up today's lesson with affirmation statements. Now, affirmation statements are a little bit like the opposite of negative thinking trap. It's like a positive thinking route. Its purpose is to help you reach goals and to change your way of thinking so that it's more productive in your life. So a positive affirmation statement is just a quick statement. It can be 1 or 2 words, or it can be a sentence or two, and it's something that you're going to say to yourself on a regular basis to help reframe your mind and change it so that your thinking pathways are positive, not negative. Now, these are something that you can do every day. You can stand in front of the mirror and say your affirmation statement a few times to kind of set your place for the day. So in the morning, you stand in front of the mirror very confidently and say your affirmation statement to place it. And it can be something simple that'll work towards a goal. So I will smoke less cigarettes today. I will eat less Mars bars. I will walk more steps. I will walk into a room and be the most positive version of myself I can be. It will be something that will help guide you in your mind and set the day for how it works. But it can be also something very powerful to use in the moment. Have a statement ready so that if you notice that you have a thinking trap and you disrupt it and you know it's a thinking trap, but you're still anxious, you still know that your mind is still kind of slowly inching its way back to that negative thinking, but you want to keep it away from there. You know it's wrong, you know it's hard, you know it's not right, but you want to try and stop it from going there. So you can use positive affirmation in situations like this as well. If you go back to our first video, notice I had a bracelet on, a beat it bracelet. They're called Mala beads, and these are something that I used when I was in a situation that I knew I had a thinking trap. And I could identify the thinking trap, and I could kind of untwist my thinking and challenge it, but it's still kind of seated in my brain. My brain still wants to go towards it. So what I would do is I'd take the bracelet, and the bracelet had 25 beads on it, and I would put the bracelet in my hand and I'd roll through each of the beads. And every time I'd go to a new bead, I would say my affirmation. Whatever it is that was stressing me out, I'd come up with a saying of, I am not my anxiety. No one is mad at me, I only feel this way because of my anxiety. And I'd say it over and over again until I got to the end of the bracelet. And maybe I'd do it again. So I would say this to myself 25, 50, even 100 times. Roll it through your hands. No one is mad at me, it's just my anxiety. No one is mad at me, it's just my anxiety. And that again will rewire your brain. So check out in the Wakelet, there's a couple different worksheets and handouts about how to make a positive affirmation. Look at what your goals in your life are. Look at the things that you want to change and create positive affirmations that'll help you do that. You want to make them simple and direct to your affirmation. You want to make it something that is tangible, not completely unrealistic, and start small. It can be a few words. Today I will do better. I am okay. I am not my feelings. And you can build these into your everyday routine so that when you are stressed out, maybe you'll do some mindfulness breathing and then do your positive affirmation. And this will help rewire your brain so that you're not primed to do thinking traps. You're primed to think positively. That is it for today, guys. In the Wakelet, you will see a couple worksheets that I want you to do. They're all about identifying your thinking traps and dissecting them. You'll also see some more information on thinking traps. There's some good videos in there, as well as some interesting stuff around positive affirmation. Now, just to review, some of the main pillars that we've gone through so far in the program are the cognitive triangle, emotional regulation cycle, the 4 steps on how to stop intense emotions. We also did the ABCDE model today. Those are kind of the 4 main pillars, and I think that knowing your thinking traps is another huge pillar. I'm sure if we talked before this program, you would have told me, yeah, you need to eat right, you need to sleep, you need to exercise, you should do some deep breathing when you're stressed out. But I really think thinking traps are the key for making sure that your brain is working the way that you want it to, and you're not working against yourselves. Because again, we are so harsh to ourselves. We speak so terribly to ourselves, and that's a thinking trap. We got to make sure that the way that we're thinking, the logic that we're using in a situation, the way that we're interpreting events, the way that we believe events happen is all in our mind. And that's the thing that we can change. We can't change what's happening to us in the exterior world, but we can change how it affects us on a cognitive, mental level. And that's where you're going to see change. That's how you're going to improve your mental health, have a better mindset, have a positive outlook on the world, is to change the way your brain works. And to do that, you need to stop having the negative thoughts. So identify thinking traps and dispute them and say, no, this isn't reality, this is just my brain working against me. And I guarantee you'll start to see some real positive changes in your life. If anyone has any questions or concerns or wants more information on any of the specific topics we talked about today, please let me know and I'll do my best to get you some more information. Until next time, thanks a lot.